It's a well-known fact that being thankful and kind is good for you. Professor and researcher Robert A. Emmons puts it this way: clinical trials indicate that the practice of gratitude can have a dramatic and lasting effect on a person's life. It can lower your blood pressure, improve your immune function, and facilitate more efficient sleep. One recent study from the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine found that people who were more grateful actually have better heart health, specifically less inflammation and a healthier heart rhythms. They showed better overall well-being, were less depressed, and showed less fatigue, and slept better. Another study found that gratitude can boost your immune system. Stressed out law students who characterized themselves as being optimistic actually had more disease-fighting cells in their bodies. And in another study, people who keep a gratitude journal have reduced dietary fat intake up to 25%. All those researchers, everything is wonderful, isn't it? And we know this. We know that gratitude can have an impact. Being grateful and kind can change our life. Every day we go about our lives seeking to improve our life. We go to work. Even if it's a job we really don't want to do, we go to work to improve our life. We earn money to buy clothes, pay the rent, gas or electricity in your cars. We do this. We go to work to make our lives better. We exercise and eat healthy to make our lives better. So that hopefully we live longer, healthier lives. And being grateful is just as important as diet and exercise. In fact, one research says that being grateful will actually change your life. Being grateful will change your brain chemistry. Rewire your brain. Living in a posture of gratitude can be life-changing for us. In other words, being grateful, being kind and considerate, being thankful doesn't just make us feel better. It actually will change our life. Now, being grateful is more than just gathering around the dinner table on Thanksgiving weekend and saying what we're thankful for. But that's a pretty good place to start. So as you gather around the dinner table this weekend, be thankful. But then begin to live a life of gratitude, because it will change your life. It will bring you closer to the living life that Jesus had called us and is intended for us to live. This morning we're going to shift a little bit from our series on meditative prayer, and we're going to look at the Gospel of Luke this morning. We're going to focus, if you haven't noticed, on gratitude this Thanksgiving weekend. A weekend where it's all focused about gathering with friends and family. And gratitude can be a lifestyle that can transform our life, can transform our health, our spiritual well-being, our physical, mental, emotional well-being. The middle of chapter 17 of Luke's Gospel, there's a short story. And it can be easily overlooked with the other things that are going on in Luke 17. But it's the story of the 10 lepers, and we probably know the story quite well. But it's a fascinating little story about Jesus, his kindness, and his kindness to outsiders. The story begins with Jesus and his disciples leaving Galilee and headed towards Jerusalem. They're traveling on the border between Samaria and Galilee, which is saying something because any good Jew of the day would have gone out of their way to bypass Samaria. Samaritans were treated as second-class citizens at best. But here we see Jesus intentionally walking, skirting Samaria, and then we see him entering the town. So let me read from verse 11 down to 17. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into the village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourself to the priests." And they went, and they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back and praised God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Luke doesn't give us a lot of detail of why Jesus is headed into the village with his disciples. Maybe it's to eat something, grab some water, or sleep for the night, which most Jews would not have done in Jesus' day. But Jesus, as he normally does, pushes the cultural boundaries a little bit and enters this Samaritan village, or at least is attempting to, when he's met by these 10 lepers. Now, leprosy is a disease that affects the nervous system. Often those with leprosy or diseases like them would lose their fingers and toes and have a disfigured face. And according to Levitical law, lepers were considered unclean and banned from interaction with all of society. They often wore bells around them so that everybody knew that they were coming, and they would yell, "Unclean, unclean," everywhere they went, just to warn others. They were despised and alienated. They were social outcasts. These men had lost everything, lost their families, careers, likely lived in caves outside of town. They were scavengers and depended on each other for survival. Somehow these men knew that Jesus was coming and decided that they would go and try to meet him. They respected the law and kept their distance, but they knew they needed to get his attention. And maybe, just maybe, all the stories that they heard about Jesus and healing people were true, and that Jesus could heal them. The lame walking, the blind seeing, this was their chance. Chance to return to normal life, to live with their families and have a career, and eat and sleep in their own bed. As they stood at a distance, the top of their lungs, they yelled, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." Desperate to be healed, desperate to return to life. They did everything they could to get Jesus' attention. What length would you have gone for the opportunity to be healed by Jesus? With no other options, these men yelled and shouted, waved their hands, jumped up and down, did everything they could possibly do just for the opportunity. Their lives depended on Jesus' response, on his mercy, And out of compassion, Jesus' amazing compassion, he sees them calling and yelling at them. And he just simply says, go. Go show yourself to the priests. He doesn't touch them. He doesn't interact with them. He doesn't even heal them at this point. Off they go to the priest. The priest in the village was the only one who could tell somebody that they were clean. Now, we don't know for sure because Luke doesn't say anything, but we only know that one of them was a Samaritan, which most scholars would say that the other 9 were Jews. That's important because they would go in different directions, different temples, different priests. One went to the Samaritan temple, the other 9 to the Jewish temple, to the priest, to be found clean. And as they go, they find out that they are healed. Their skin was healed. Their face came back to normal. The right color and the right shape, and their hair looked normal. Everything was back to life. It was restored. And we have to ask ourselves, what would we have done at that moment? Recognizing that we had been healed, running as fast, maybe even faster now that we know that we can prove to the priest that we are healed. Now, it'd be nice to think that once they went to the priest and the priest said, you're clean, they could return home that afternoon and everything would be hunky-dory. But if you go back to Leviticus chapter 13, and it's a long chapter, chapter 13, it talks about all the unclean, all the procedure, and it talks about what it means to be clean. They had to go through a period of isolation 7 days before they were deemed clean, even though the priest would say that they're clean. So wouldn't you want to get that started as fast as possible? That process of isolation and be able to return to your family. So imagine your delight when you're headed to the temple and you find yourself healed. Your skin and your body has returned to normal. You can't wait to be reunited with your family and with society. All 10 men were no doubt amazed, grateful, thankful for what Jesus had done in their life. Jesus had healed them without even touching them. The Samaritan is the one that returns before getting to the temple. And he comes back to Jesus and he falls at the feet of Jesus. Thankful, yes, for sure. But more than that, all 10 men were thankful for their healing, no doubt. No more bells to wear. No more shouting, unclean, unclean. They could eat real food. They could sleep in their bed. They could regain access to society. They had gone from complete darkness to overwhelming light in a matter of moments. They were all thankful. But being thankful and living a life of gratitude are worlds apart, I think. Again, like the story of the Good Samaritan, the least likely person responds to God's amazing love in a dramatic way and comes and falls down at the feet of Jesus. See, being thankful or having gratitude is something far beyond just a feeling, right? To show gratitude takes intentionality. It takes energy to stop and acknowledge the giver. Yes, I've received these gifts and I am thankful for them. All 10 men would have been thankful. But one allows that thankfulness to penetrate their actions, and he falls down at Jesus' feet. This weekend, we get to gather with friends and family and celebrate Thanksgiving. It wasn't too many years ago that we couldn't. That on a Thanksgiving weekend, much like this one, we were limited to who we could and who we couldn't associate with. Maybe we've forgotten that. And a few years past that, before that, on this Thanksgiving weekend, on this particular day, October 8th, 2010, I was laying in a hospital having Thanksgiving dinner. Let me tell you how thankful I am that I'm not having Thanksgiving dinner in a hospital. It's just not the same. But Thanksgiving, giving thanks, being kind, having gratitude goes far beyond just a feeling and far beyond just a weekend. So if we walk away from this weekend just feeling thankful, then we've missed the point of Jesus' story here. We're like the 9 lepers and we just carry on with our business. May we be more like the Samaritan that allows the healing of his body to be secondary to his acknowledgement of the giver in the moment. Falling down at the feet of Jesus was an act of gratitude, but it was also an act of worship. Here, a non-Jew realizes that Jesus was more than just an amazing man. He was the Messiah. And his act of healing lepers, was one sign of the coming Messiah. The 9 Jews missed that. They should have known. They should have known and saw all the signs. But the one that responds is the Samaritan, the least likely of them. And he comes and he falls down in a posture of gratitude at the feet of Jesus. It's more than proper etiquette. It's an act of worship. It's an act of surrender. Now, Jesus wasn't mad at the other 9. Maybe he was a little bit disappointed. But they live in a different culture than we do, right? We think somebody's disrespectful or inconsiderate or impolite for not saying thank you, but we don't even live in that culture anymore, do we? When was the last time you heard the word thank you? The other 9 missed Jesus as the coming Messiah, as the one that would restore all things and usher in God's kingdom. They missed it all together, so focused on their own lives. So how do we, in our moments, in our days, have this posture of gratitude? How do we move beyond just a simple thank you to our heartfelt thanks and appreciation and action, an act of worship? Like I said, we hear the words thank you less and less in our world, don't we? And it's quite easy to complain about the service industry and how it isn't like it used to be. Gratitude comes from knowing who Jesus is and what he has done for us. It's realizing, as the Samaritan did, that Jesus healed. Yes, he healed the Samaritan, but he also saved the Samaritan. He loves him, cares for him, and he does us. Though our healing may not always be physical, he continues to work and move and change our life. Just as gratitude can change our life and alter our chemistry in our brain, so can the work of the Holy Spirit. Like the Samaritan, this realization should bring us to the feet of Jesus, to kneel before him in gratitude and extend it beyond just our feelings to the very depth of who we are. This is a posture of gratitude, recognizing that God is in every aspect of our life. In her blog series on gratitude, Charity Craig writes this: I think one of the most important ways that gratitude moves us beyond feelings to fulfillment into regular worship is by reminding us that of God's ongoing work in the world. We feel gratitude when we sense his movement, when we become aware of the very small part we play in the very big plan of his redemption story. We live in a world that not only lacks politeness of opening doors for others and saying thank you, but a posture of gratitude is countercultural to our world. It goes beyond a thank you that's important, but sometimes it's just as easily to say nothing, to be silent, to not give thanks or say thank you for something that's a small gesture. It's just as easy to spew a whole bunch of words that we come to regret than it is to say nothing at all. A posture of gratitude is about taking the time to give praise, to stop, to take actions in turning and saying thank you, in a heartfelt appreciation for someone and what they have done for you. So may we not spew out all those words of negativity. May we not stay silent. May we say thank you. May we give a gesture of kindness. May we act in a way that is countercultural to our world. And we do this because we know and love and worship Jesus, who has transformed and changed our life and has shown that gratitude to us by going to the cross and dying for us. May we allow gratitude to change us into the person Jesus is calling us to be. Father God, we do thank you. We thank you for your Son, Jesus, for his amazing love. Yet while we were sinners, came and died for us. May we live with a posture of gratitude. May we show that gratitude to others. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.